So yesterday, Little Nightmares 3 was finally announced at Gamescom alongside a full gameplay trailer for the game, which will be releasing sometime in 2024. I'm super happy. This means I get to cover one of my favorite series on the channel again. In fact, the series that launched my theory career. But there are some pretty big secrets in this trailer, including some hints about one of the new protagonists who might just be someone who we've seen before. So as promised, here is my breakdown and analysis of the trailer, including some details you might have missed, some potential references to previous games, and of course, some of my own little theories as well. So the trailer for Little Nightmares 3 features 2 new protagonists as well as a number of new locations and monsters. The trailer starts in one of these new locations, a desert city known as the Necropolis. Now you probably recognize the name. Necropolis means City of the Dead in Greek, which is very fitting considering most of the people we see here are indeed dead. Something very common with the locations in this series. The trailer seems to show off the cause of all this death though. One of the new enemies we will have to face is the monster baby. Not only is it a giant, the biggest enemy we've seen in the series so far, but it also has the ability to turn people into stone or possibly ash with its eye. Something we saw in both the Maw and the Nest of the previous games. It seems like this monster baby is responsible for the fall of this city, much like how the Thin Man was responsible for the death of the Pale City. But one detail you might have missed, it seems like there might still be at least some people alive in this city. In this scene you can see a number of body bags strung up around the background, again something very common in the world of Little Nightmares. But tucked away in the back, you can see the silhouette of what looks like a large person either tying or untying one of these bags. It's possible that this is the person responsible for stringing up all these people, although it's not clear why. Perhaps this is a way to pacify the giant baby, perhaps this person is feeding the giant baby to send it to sleep. After all, we do see it appear to be sleeping in the trailer. The giant baby also looks very much like a doll. It looks like it's made from porcelain, which could tie into one of my old theories about Little Nightmares and dolls, something I will probably cover again in a future video. But it does seem to fit with what we've seen before in previous games, with dolls or other human-like entities coming to life. But this isn't the only new location we'll be seeing in Little Nightmares 3. The trailer shows off a few, including what looks like a carnival. The official website for the game actually gives us some more hints to this. It seems to imply that the world of Little Nightmares is called the Nowhere, something that the audio series seems to be building up. But this particular part of the world is known as the Spiral, and it's described as being a cluster of disturbing places or a cluster of dystopian lands. But the website does confirm we'll be going to the Necropolis, a funfair, a gloomy factory, and even more. It's clear that they have something that they don't want to reveal just yet, perhaps a location we've been to in previous games. Talking of that funfair though, we do get a small glimpse of it in the trailer. Here we can see some creatures that look very similar to the guests in the first game. In that game they were obsessed with hunger, even as they were led to their own deaths aboard the Maw. They were almost treated like cattle in that game, and it does seem like something similar could be going on here. They seem to be herded towards something, with these two standing guard. I'm willing to bet that the fun they encounter here might be their last. But that's not the only thing that's similar to previous games. Alright, let's get into the biggest potential secret that I found in this trailer. We can see that Little Nightmares 3 is going to be the first co-op game in the series, with 2 new playable characters. These are called Low and Alone. Now those names fit very nicely in with other characters such as Mono. Low is described as the boy in the raven mask, and he does have a sort of plague doctor look about him. Something which might actually be very relevant if you listen to the first 2 episodes of the audio series, which talk about the character Noon, spelled no one, who has what she calls a water disease. Again, future video for that one, but the most interesting character here is Alone. Her description is actually very telling. She's described as the girl with pigtails. Now this started alarm bells off in my head straight away. We've heard about a girl with pigtails in this series before. In the comic book series for Little Nightmares 2, we were introduced to a number of characters, most of which I strongly believe were in the game in one way or another. But arguably the most interesting one was the red-headed girl with pigtails, the one who was always shown to have a nosebleed. If you remember, she was the one who was trapped in the hospital. For some reason, she was locked in a cell, alone, marking days on the wall. She slowly dug her way out using the spoons that were given to her. Eventually, she managed to break through, only to find herself in another room that also had these same markings. This time though, the door was open and she seemed free, only for us to see that the doctor was eerily stalking her from the ceiling. What made this character far more interesting though was that we could see the same scratch marks in several locations throughout the Pale City, even as far as seeing another hole dug with a spoon. This potentially implied that she had managed to escape the hospital, with some people even theorizing that this was the girl in Little Nightmares 1, backed up with the fact that somebody in the Pale City tied bedsheets together to escape and did so in Little Nightmares 1 as well. With Little Nightmares 2 confirmed to be a prequel to Little Nightmares 1, it could be possible. Now if you take a closer look at the new character, Alone, you can see she also has red hair in pigtails, although these ones are much shorter and frayed, but it's entirely possible that this is the same pigtail girl and that she just cut them shorter, which would make total sense in a harsh world such as this. In fact, if you take a closer look, you can see that she even instinctively rubs her face here, looking like she's wiping something away, which could make total sense since we know she's prone to nosebleeds. Now it did appear that the girl in Little Nightmares 1 did in fact perish, which we saw in the DLC, but it's still entirely possible that Alone is the very same girl from Little Nightmares 2, meaning it's entirely possible that we could see more characters from other games. In fact, speaking of characters from other games, did you catch the one in the mirror? The mirror seems to be a very important part of Little Nightmares 3. First of all, we can see that Lo has some sort of ability to travel through them, eerily similar to Mono's power to travel through televisions in Little Nightmares 2. Fun fact, if you look closely, you can actually see a head or a mask on the shelf here, something we've seen before in the hospital in the second game. But the broken mirror is shown several times throughout the trailer, and a number of things can be seen in it if you look closely. First of all, we can see this one that looks like a gnome, which is shown right before a scene that we can see a dead gnome next to a furnace. This is actually a callback to the DLC for the first game, where we learnt that gnomes for some reason seem to work furnaces. Perhaps it's just in their nature. But later on we can see a mysterious shadowy figure that looks exactly like the shadow of the lady from Little Nightmares 1. This would actually make a lot of sense. If you remember from the first game, she had a strong link to mirrors, with most of the mirrors around her residence smashed. We theorized this was tied to her vanity, and in the DLC we saw that her reflection in the mirror didn't actually match what we saw her face to be. In fact, this was how Six defeated the lady, using a handheld mirror. Possibly forcing her to see herself as she truly was weakened her enough for Six to finish her off. So it would make total sense for this mirror to be tied to the lady. Perhaps this is the lady's shadow form, just like how Six had a shadow form too, but it's even possible that we can see Six in this mirror too. Either way, I think that the shadow of the lady being so prominent means we are going to see a direct continuation of the story from the first game, which is something I am desperate to see. We get a super quick look at this scene, which is probably part of the factory that's mentioned on the website, but it does look very much like the Moor to me, so perhaps the factory will have a similar feeling to the first game. We get one final look at the factory with the final scene. Whatever the factory is for, it's creating and dumping something in large quantities, possibly a metaphor for waste, since every game has been almost like a dark mirror of humanity's flaws. The first game was centered around hunger, the second around escapism. Perhaps this one is all about waste, which could make sense since desert areas are often referred to as wastes as well. But there we go, just some of the things I noticed in the trailer for Little Nightmares 3. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss my future videos, as well as my coverage for other series like Poppy Playtime and more as well. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time.